And, these are not just words. I want the listeners to know that what does volatility truly mean? Volatility means, those moments which can convert a paper loss into a real loss, because it is in these moments that human beings, all of us as investors, make our big errors and convert paper loss into a real loss, and get out of the asset class and kill our own compounding. So the solutions that he has designed over time, and a lot of them he has put it out in his book as well, really go a long way in thinking independently. I think the most important dimension is being independent thinker, not just go with the cliche that everyone talks about. No doubt, buy and hold over time creates wealth, but it creates wealth for only that 1 or 2% people who have the temperament to not, focus on buy and hold, and not buy and sold. Most of us sell when volatility hits. So in theory, buy and hold makes wealth, but in real world, volatility doesn't allow us to hold. So these are very practical solutions. It's very easy to write a book. It's very easy to write few tweets. It's very easy to write cliched statements that we copy paste from others who have a different context. But I think what I like about Sunil is a very practical lens to investing, to real world problems, to real world consumer and investor problems, and constant rigor, perseverance to keep saying the same thing again and again, till we start applying it to work. So I think
Even though it sounds boring,
experiences.
for a lot of time it sounds boring because I'm repeating myself again and again, as you rightly said, Kalpen.
Yeah. So I think I wish we continue to pursue this journey of educating ourselves and investors the right way. And the last thing I want to highlight, Mubina, here is, we all say that investing is successful when there is an investment process. Now, it is such a cliched word all over again. If you were to ask anyone, show me what is your investment process, I don't know how many can highlight. So likewise, I think everything that I have discussed with Sunil over my 15 years of association is around process dimension. What will be the techniques that you will use to put portfolios together? So fund managers have a process, advisors also need to have a process, and investors also need to have a process. In fact, when all three of them work in unison, in harmony, great wealth outcomes get created. So I think these are few of my experiences, and I've been, a beneficiary of these learnings of simplicity, of discipline, and of perseverance. So that's it from my side.
Thank you
Kalpen,
so much.
the one sentence I think that you put very well is that Sunil was like the IKEA, providing the building blocks in many ways to the mutual fund industry. And even when I read the book, there were certain concepts that actually Sunil introduced, and we take them for granted, and you realize, okay, like an STP or a more than a month SIP and things like that. And I think it's great that you provided all those investment solutions. So thanks for that, Kalpen. Sunil, you've obviously been a student all your life, and I'm sure you're going to continue to be one. You literally have a whole chapter dedicated, unlearn to relearn. So I can imagine you're going to be a student all your life. But who has been your most ardent student?
Ardent fan?
Ardent fan, ardent student?
My most ardent fan is my younger son.
Oh, how nice.
I tweet, before I tweet, I don't know how he manages to do retweet and a like immediately thereafter. He's a keen learner, he's a keen student, he's working under Akhil at Motilal Oswal now. He's one of the most ardent fans of mine. He keeps me fit also by competing with me on a game of table tennis or cricket every single day since we are under the lockdown. So I would really treat him as one of the biggest fans and one of the biggest loyal, followers, I would say, as far as I'm concerned.
I'm sure he's a great teacher as well, right, Sunil? You learn new things from them, almost every other day. So I can imagine he's not only a student, but also a great teacher to you. Okay. All right. Well, let's move on. And Radhika, over to you. You've known Sunil relatively for a shorter period of time, but I know it's been a very enriching time for the both of you. I mean, I think when Sunil launched his Khas Baat section, you were one of his first guests. You all then worked on the Bharat Bond, together. Though I do believe that Sunil was not exactly a fan of your pro-cyclical BAS, but then I think later he did turn around. So what are your thoughts about Sunil as a thought leader through this period that you have got to know him, with your now frequent interactions, from your interactions on Twitter. Now, I believe you both have formed this a mutual admiration society. Your thoughts are very similar on, the entire asset allocation theories and investor protection ideas.
You're on mute, Radhika.
Sorry about that. Thanks, Mubina, and thanks, Sunil, for having me. And again, happiest birthday and heartiest congratulations on the book.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I met Sunil about 4.5, 5 years ago, just when I had joined the industry. And I think before we started talking about BAF and Bharat Bond and all the things that happened, I think Sunil walked me through his long journey in the mutual fund industry when I was a newcomer. And what I was actually struck by then, which I think people don't give him enough credit for, is the resilience. I think the industry has gone through so much change. There has been so much change from a distribution perspective. Direct came in, etc. But Sunil has constantly evolved. And I think that was what struck me when I met him for the first time. And that, willingness to constantly evolve, to adapt, to not have a fixed mindset, I think reflects in everything that Sunil stands for. And I think it is an incredible quality for someone to have. There's an ability to be resilient, to rise from challenges. And I think his personal journey is very, very interesting. Then, of course, we started talking about BAF, which is a passion project for both of us. And as you very correctly said, we had disagreements in approaches to BAF. But what the good thing about Sunil is, we've debated, we've talked, he's watched, and he hasn't just endorsed what we do because he wanted to, because I said go out and do it. He spent time to think about it, to test it. And then once he was convinced and he found the argument, I think it made sense. So Sunil is also one who's open to changing his opinions. I also remember now, of course, as you correctly said, we are both big advocates of BAF. I think one thing that is a very close to Sunil and me both is that at the end of the day, his investor experience is very important. There are lots of discussions, Sunil knows, about whether BAFs are relevant. And now BAFs have become a lot more popular now than they were 2 years ago, Sunil. But there were lots of discussions about whether investors should do asset allocation, advisors should do asset allocation. And one of the greatest things Sunil says is it's not about investors or advisors. I think the industry's responsibility is to bring in more investors and keep them through. And whatever tools you can use to do that. And if tools like BAF are the ones that do it, then they are good tools. And we shouldn't debate whether it's investor or advisor. So I really like that practical approach to growth, to caring about investors that comes with practicality. We also had great interactions. When we launched Bharat Bond, it had its share of skeptics. Sunil was one of the first ones that came forth and said, this is going to make sense. The whole concept of predictable returns in a target maturity structure is meaningful. And he was the one who was evangelizing how advisors can use concepts like this rather than think of them as a threat, think of them as an opportunity for investors. So we had some fantastic interactions around that. And finally, I have to say one more thing, that over the last few years, whenever the industry has been in a period of crisis and things are not always right, the easiest temptation is to go out there and be negative. I think Sunil has been a fantastic brand ambassador for this industry. In all his social interactions, in his interactions with advisors, he's always tried to be one who is solving problems and talking about the positive side of the industry. And that is something I tremendously respect. So Sunil, congratulations on your journey. I think it's very much 60 not out, and there's a long way ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for really, really good and kind words, Radhika. Means a lot.
Sunil, 36, 37 years is definitely a very long time. And like Radhika said, you've constantly been evolving yourself to suit whatever it is that the industry is demanding or whatever you think the industry needs. Now, obviously, and I'm sure there have been times, especially as you mentioned, when your hair was not white enough to display the experience, that the boards and the institutions said that no, it's not going to work, or they would not believe in your concept or idea despite the conviction that you had. How would you then break those doors or prove your theories? In the book, I see a lot of numbers, I see a lot of work done, so the proof is in the pudding. But how do
Absolutely.
you sometimes get through qualitatively through these boards and financial institutions when you have your ideas?
So I have given an example and many examples, in fact, under the Think Hatke chapter, where one of the corporate houses, without naming them, the equity was a taboo topic for them. The only thing which I had to do was I stuck to my conviction in terms of appreciation transfer from liquid to equity, because they were only allowed to invest in liquid funds. And those days, liquid and income funds, there were only two categories. So I went on addressing different CFOs and the treasury heads first to start with. They were convinced, but they said equity is not allowed. So I went to at the holding company level directors. Over a period of 1 year, I must have met them almost 12 times every month when I used to travel from Gurgaon back to Bombay. And they said, Sunil, have we lost the opportunity? So that gave me the confidence that I'm on the right path. They are liking what I'm saying. So it was more of perseverance and the number crunching. See, the numbers and NAVs are available to anybody and everybody. How do you put them in the right perspective to convince your target segment is very, very important. And that's the skill which I honed over a period of time, slowly and steadily. Of course, it never comes, because I'm not from a finance background. I did my CA, but after that got into the finance side and then finally the mutual fund side. So perseverance and belief in your own ideas and conviction. So I always say that only conviction can bring consistency. If you're not convinced, you will change your opinions based on views, news, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you're a gentleman who's spent years convincing with his numbers and his concepts, the boards and the who's who of the financial industry. So, viewers and readers, be prepared to be thrown a lot of facts and figures when you read this book, because Mr. Jhaveri is going to convince you and lead you. Okay, well, let's move on now. And Snehal Dixit is here as well, BSc Star MF. Mr. Ashishkumar Chauhan as well wanted to be a part, but unfortunately he had last minute travel plans. So Snehal, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're on mute, Snehal.
You've known the work, of Mr. Bond, obviously, the contribution he's had to the mutual fund industry, his suggestions, etc. And, how would you rate his contribution? I think Mr. Chauhan had obviously had an interaction with Mr. Jhaveri, and he had integrated, the BSc Star MF platform with his solution. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Thank you, first of all, and wishing you a very, very happy birthday. This is a 60th birthday, and you will always remember. I think every birthday we do some commitment and we follow that, and I'm sure you will follow that in future as well. I'm sure you will learn something different on your 70th birthday and 75th birthday also.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity. And okay, so thanks all the panelists as well. Congratulations on your book, Sunil. So what I feel is that, and I'll answer the first part of the question, and then I'll move to the integration part with the BSc. I feel there are many pillars of mutual fund industry, strengthening it with their skill set, knowledge, and expertise. And I feel, Mr. Bond, you are amongst that.
Thank you.
And I truly feel that, because it's a long journey for you. And the way Kalpen has spoke or Radhika has spoke, I don't have that great association with you, though I am part of the industry for many, many years. And I have seen you in many conferences and in, different meetings and all. But I have actually started my interaction more with you when I joined actually BSc a few months back. So, and I feel very amazed, because see, you started on institutional side, but the way you have started covering concepts like weekly SIP. So when somebody is looking at SIP, you look at the monthly installment. But typically, from the rupee cost averaging point of view, you actually educated the industry and many in the industry about the weekly SIP. So typically doing 4 installments of SIP in a month. Similarly, what I remember while I was reading your post and I was talking to different people, explaining the systematic withdrawal plan concept, which is so important. And I feel that this concept should be picked up by industry and the investor, and we should definitely have more education around it, which you have already started doing long back.
Just to interject, I think Ashish was the first one in Motilal Oswal who decided not to declare dividends but concentrate on SWP. Ashish, am I right?
Yeah, that was when we created the dynamic fund actually.
Correct,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, continue, Sunil. Sorry.
No, absolutely fine. And thirdly, always people used to go for dividend option. I think today people are getting more educated. People are moving to growth option. But I think you are the one of the important person who is educated. A lot of RMs, a lot of industry professionals about it to talk more and more about the growth option and how the growth is beneficial over the long-term time over the dividend. So I think when I was reading and when I was talking to you yesterday, I realized that you have trained 75,000 industry professionals. That big number, it seems. And not only industry professionals, but the investors, distributors, advisors, RMs, so many people. And I wish to be your student in future as well, Sunil. In the COVID time, you have trained 25,000 people. That's a good work. You kept people engaged. You keep learning going on in people's mind.
Yeah.
And I think that's really a good job. I think you will reach 1 lakh very soon.
Thank you.
The journey will continue. Coming to your second question, Mubina, Ashish sir was very impressed with the smart solution. And few months before I joined BSc, BSc Star MF platform had an integration with the smart solution. And today what happens is that any advisor or a distributor who is basically following adopted smart solution product of Mr. Jhaveri, they are executing their orders, their customers, investors' orders through BSc Star MF platform seamlessly. So whether it is investment or whether it is a rebalancing portfolio, it seamlessly happened with the smart solution with the BSc Star MF platform. And we wish to engage with such ideas from the investor awareness point of view, because the more and more you do value addition, it is better for the industry and it is better for the end user. So I wish you all the best, Sunil.
Thank you.
And we wish to engage with you more. And
I'm very happy that you're part of the panelists.
Thank you so much.
Well, I'm sure this is just the beginning, Snehal, since you as well, just been a couple of months with you at BSc Stars. I'm sure it's going to be, just the beginning of a relationship. So Sanjay, we've been talking a lot about all the recommendations, the suggestions put forward by Sunil. Some of them, of course, are mentioned in the book. According to you, what's been, one of the most valuable ones? The more than a month SIP, or the removal of the dividend option altogether, which, like Sunil said, Ashish had actually already implemented as Sunil's suggestion. The exit load bid. What do you think, Sanjay, you think has been one of the most value-added recommendations, something that's really improved investor experience?
Well, thanks for the question, Mubina. First of all, Sunil, happy birthday.
Thank you.
And thank you for including me in the panel. As I said, I can't actually believe that you're 60. So on the knowledge and experience side, I can certainly believe you're 60. But the story of Benjamin Button comes to mind. You're getting younger and younger every day. But thank you so much. So Mubina, picking one single contribution that Sunil has made, I think will be a disservice to the years that Sunil has spent educating people in this industry. I think what has struck me actually, in almost every suggestion that Sunil has made, and you talked about some of them, we've now got smart solutions, his moniker, MisterBond, which really is a testament to his knowledge about debt funds, when debt funds were not even an asset class that was understood at all in the industry. I think what has struck me is a few things. One, Sunil has the courage of his convictions. And I use the word courage very consciously, because quite often Sunil has been ahead of trends when he's made a suggestions, and that can result in a negative reaction. And quite often it has. But Sunil has never stepped back. So I think that's one thing that has struck me. So any suggestion, you take any suggestion, he's had the courage of his conviction. Two, I think anyone who knows Sunil will know that the suggestion is made with absolute altruism, in investor interest, with absolutely no self-interest. So there was no self-interest in saying, don't chase dividends, go for SWP. There's no self-interest in saying, use volatility as your friend, as Kalpen said. I think that's the other thing. And the third thing that has really struck me about almost all of the suggestions that Sunil has made, and regardless of whether people have agreed with him, or in fact whether Sunil has agreed with what the industry has done. We had that great example of the BAF concept between Radhika and Sunil. Sunil has never been negative. I think Sunil has always educated with a positive mindset. So even if Sunil has disagreed, he's come at it with a positive mindset. So I think those are the things that have actually struck me from almost every suggestion Sunil has made. And if you think about the various ones we've talked about on this panel, if you think about the ones that are in the book, I think you'll find this thread running through almost all the suggestions. Now, if you're going to ask me for one, I think it is his very unique concept around SIPs. I'm a big believer in SIPs. I think we are in a very simple industry that we sometimes complicate massively for absolutely no reason. And for the average retail investor, an SIP, and particularly an SIP with a smart solution, I think can really fulfill almost everyone's needs. So I really love that focus, that conviction, and that suggestion. But I really wanted to mention those. I thought those qualities that are much more important and visible than just the suggestions themselves.
Thank you so much, Sanjay.
Sunil, how have your conversations changed? From, I'm not going to go back 36 years, that's just too long a time ago, but maybe from even a few years ago, 3-4 years ago. I can imagine the big pivotal point was obviously March 2020. But how do you think your engagement, your conversations have changed? How have your recommendations changed?
See, 2008-9 was a turning point in all our lives, especially in the mutual fund industry, when we lost 60% and we had nowhere to hide. That was the time and the thought process where I started thinking about why are we not able to prejudge the corrections, or prejudge that the markets are expensive, and prejudge that why we should not get out of aggressive asset class and get into conservative asset class. So I started playing with numbers. As Sanjay mentioned, that I started doing exit strategies, which not a single person, it was one man against the entire industry, so to say. When I said exit strategy from SIP, I was trolled and I was actually abused also. But that's behind us. Fortunately, people now have started appreciating what I'm saying. And so my engagement is that I am only going to talk about downside protection and be in the right asset class at right valuation. That is my engagement and my thought process, which I have been talking about since the last 5-6 years, especially since I started creating my smart solutions. I backtested them over various market cycles, etc. And once I was convinced, because my main mantra is that if I'm not convinced, I will not talk about it. If I'm convinced, then I will talk about it like a stubborn bull and go ahead with it. So that's what I did, and fortunately, I think industry is appreciating and recognizing that there should be some exit strategy, because if the mantra of buy and hold and sip karo jo bhul jao was supposed to work, then the statistics are revealing that investors are staying invested in equity as an asset class for not more than 2 to 3 years. So our investment returns are not in investor returns, and that, as Nick Murray says, the hideous gap between the investment returns and investor returns can be only fulfilled by being the behavior modifier, and that's our job.
Okay, very well put. Okay, Neil, coming to you, your first interaction, again, Sunil justifying why it's sort of all right for your AMC's decision to just have one scheme in India. And I believe it's after that you'll actually started conversing with each other. You're now are frequent golf buddies. I believe there is a plan as well being made to play another round of golf very soon now that things have opened up. And interestingly, Sunil also told me that it's after that one round of golf or a few rounds of golf that he played with you that he understood the scheme much better. He wrote about it. He shared that article as well, with you. So that was pretty interesting, just understanding the scheme in that way. What do you think of this part of Mr. Bond, his methodology to rank schemes, to understand schemes. There's of course details in the book, and I'm not going to really, break, spill the beans for our viewers. It's for them to read. But the last part of the book is dedicated to ranking schemes, and he does that in a very unbiased and objective manner. So, what do you think of this? Um, this talent of sort that Sunil has to develop his own proprietary methodology.
Yeah, thank you, Mubina, and happy birthday, Mr. Bond. Great 68th birthday. So let me just go a little behind, before in the timeline. I took over PPFS in a bit of a tragic circumstances, so it was important at that point to have role models and look up to people. And Ashish Bhai and Kalpen Bhai were obviously two people that I really looked up to. And another person that I started following was Mr. Bond, and basically for two reasons. One was this is a person who was talking about downside protection, and this was a few years back, and that time not many people were talking about downside protection. I mean, right now it's a bit more common, but 5 or 6 years back it wasn't that commonly spoken about, And
Let me comment there, with the way people are investing in crypto, I don't think downside protection even is being talked about now.
Sure. Yes, and the other thing you spoke about was SWPs and how dividends are probably not the right way to go in equity funds. And those are two things that were close to me, and that's two of the things that we followed at PPFS. So when we launched our scheme also in 2013, we never launched with a dividend plan. We only we told investors go for an SWP kind of a thing to take your money out and exit if you need to. And obviously downside protection was a huge thing for us. I think that's kind of what we kind of really concentrate on, and that those are two things that he wrote about, and I started following him. And how we met was pretty unconventional, because I remember it was tweets. I think he wrote something on Twitter about golf, and I just happened to mention, hey, I also play golf. And he's like, okay, I'll call you when I play golf next time in Bombay. When I'm in Mumbai, I'll call you. And that was about it, I didn't think about it. And then one fine day I get a call. Hey, Neil, you want to play golf tomorrow at 7 a.m.? I'm like, yeah, sure, let's go. Let's go do it, And a golf course is a very good place to meet someone, is because for 2 or 3 hours you have them captive. They can't go anywhere. However bad you are playing or however nonsense you're talking, they have to stay with you for the next 2 or 3 hours. So I was happy I met him in a bit of an informal environment, because we immediately struck a friendship, and it was very casual, right? I mean, so we played golf a few times, and that's how we really became friends, and we shared ideas. And one day I remember we were playing golf, and the discussion was on DAFs and BAFs, and he was like, why aren't you guys not getting into this space? And I think it's, and we all know he's a big proponent of it. And I just happened to mention that we probably don't need to launch one of these, because the existing scheme that we are running has these qualities. And I just made a passing
cash calls also.
Yes. So I just made a passing statement, and I didn't have any data to back myself up at that point on the golf call. But I just made a statement that, listen, I think we would have protected downside as well, or if not better than a lot of the BAFs and the other dynamic asset allocation funds, and we would have caught a lot of the upside too. And he looked at me, and he didn't say yes, he didn't say no, he did not agree, disagree, but it kind of piqued his interest. I kind of figured that it piqued his interest, and he's like, okay. And he asked me a couple of just questions after that, and that was it about that whole conversation. And we went about playing our golf game. We got done at 9:30. I remember this very clearly. We got ready, and then we went off to work, And so I'm sure he didn't get to work before 10 or 10:30 at that day. And a couple of hours later, at 12 o'clock, I get an email from him. I get a WhatsApp from him. Hey, look, I did all this. I put your fund, what you told me. And I said, what did I tell you? He's like, this is what he told me. And I did my work on it. And this was pre-lunch already, So I don't know when he went home, when he went to work, and when he got all this data done. And it was very data driven, It was a 5-page Word document with so much data proving all these things. I'm like, whoa, wow. I mean, it's amazing, and he was actually genuinely excited, and he was genuinely happy for me, for a small fund house. that, okay, like he could prove a few of these things, and some of these things that we were doing differently could be proven in his solutions, and his data. So I think that day was his perseverance to his craft that came out, his honesty, his consistency, his just excitement, about data, and playing with numbers. And you can see that, you can see the passion in the book when he gives his ranking system, that it's there and it's been well thought out, so it's a great tool for distributors, for investors, for everyone, for AMC people, for sure. I mean, I learned a lot more about my fund after reading his blog and article about it, so very helpful to me. And I think that's he's making a great effort to educate everyone, and to the whole industry, and wish him all the best. And this book is a testimony to that. So
thank you so much, Adil.
Yeah, and that's the ultimate compliment, really, Neil. And I'm not surprised, Neil, that he sent you a text for the golf, or gave you a call, because while I was reading the book, this one anecdote really stood out. And Sunil, if I may, I just want to share a little bit too with the viewers, where Sunil just happens to send a note to the king of Jamnagar to be invited to his gardens. And guess what? He gets the invitation. So I am not surprised that he messaged you as well, Neil.
Yes, absolutely.
But yes, very, very interesting indeed. I think I myself have also heard his entire ranking methodology. I think the fashion is blind to size, really. I think
I came from a school, Mubina, which were full of rich kids, and we were one of those middle class people. So I was not shy in terms of approaching the people at the highest levels, thanks to my friends and their parents being industrialists, Marico, Aura, Reliance, etc., etc. So that gave me the confidence to go and approach people at highest levels without blinking an eyelid.
No, I think it's still a very admirable trait, so kudos to that. And I hope our viewers as well draw inspiration that, just ask, basically. Again, simple logic, really. Okay, well, Ashish, on to you then. Again, a great association that you've known with Sunil. I think it's clearly visible when, you're being one of the first persons to actually consider the concept of doing away with dividends altogether and just offering SWP for one of your funds. Again, downside protection, a very unique concept. It's something that investors don't really look at very often, but the fact that it's such an altruistic concept, right, that you have to offer downside protection to your investors. Your investors may not even think about it. So a thought process that's very unique. What do you think of it? He's shared some of those strategies as well in this book. What made you trust Sunil's advice, his thought process?
Yeah, so, before I answer your question, I can relate to what Neil said, because if, for example, over the years, it's happened many, many times, of course, not in the last 18 months, but over the years, it's happened many, many times. Quite usual that Sunil would say that, next week I'm coming to Mumbai, I'll come to your office and I'll meet you. And many a times he sent me some email with some, like Neil said, I could relate to it, massive Excel file, and he would say that I've sent you an email and this is what I want to discuss and I'll come to your office. And that time Akhil and me used to work together. I was always telling him, yaar, abhi bahut padhai karna padega, it's like, so like, he's someone who gives a lot of homework before the meeting. So I used to feel like a student, matlab padhai karke jana padega meeting ke liye, that type of thing. So I used to always tell Akhil ke tu mil le yaar, mere ko bahut padhai karna hai.
Yeah, many times you've done that. You've done that many times, Ashish. Now I know why.
Yeah, because, too much homework actually. And I used to be a bit lazy about it. But anyway, on your question, it always made sense. I mean, I'm just sharing on a lighter note, because I knew while I didn't do too much of the homework, I knew what the conclusion would be. And it was like, preaching to someone who's already converted. But see, if you really look at data, a lot of the asset management industry evolution and how things have shaped up, our industry is very, very influenced by how things have happened in US, for example, right? And even in the US, if you take any data or if you take any global asset under management data, you will generally find people are talking that, money moves from passive into active and those kinds of things. But there are two trends which are not spoken about or which are not being noticed. This passive active debate is taking so much space that two other important trends are going unnoticed. One big trend is money moving to alternates. But what is more relevant to today's conversation is that a lot of money is actually moving into solution-oriented products. And this is not just US actually. Every year, for example, most of us refer to it every year, BCG, the consulting firm BCG, they publish their global asset management, research report and industry survey. And in that, they always have this chart which talks to you about trends in terms of what types of products are gathering AUM. So if you see solution-based products are all the rage actually. That's what's growing very, very rapidly. And it's obvious that in our industry also, given where our stage of evolution has been, he was clearly right in being the early ones to point out that we need to sell or we need to offer solution-based products, where downside protection is something which is really, really focused upon. And plus, needless to say, we don't, I think somebody already mentioned it, but it's worth repeating that only when you expose investors to extreme is when the emotional reactions kind of tend to come out. So needless to say, when you are thinking in a solution-oriented manner is only when you can ensure that the emotional reactions don't really play up. And when emotional reactions play up is when investors kind of discontinue the journey or kind of veer off track. So, very, very important concepts highlighted in a very, very effective manner. So it was quite a no-brainer to go with some of these things. The other important thing, obviously, I realize is that, I end up meeting a lot of clients. So generally speaking, many clients, they always tell us that everybody says when to invest. Nobody says when to actually get out. And clearly, it's very, very difficult. As you may be aware, a lot of investors, they exited starting November 2020. And the industry had negative flows around that time. Why did investors exit around November 2020? It's because generally speaking, when 100 becomes 80, people get scared. But when 80 comes back to 100, 101 is when people start moving out.
Exiting.
Yeah, so generally people exit at all the wrong times, really, if you ask me. Either some people exit with a loss, some people exit with very, very ordinary returns. Whereas in reality, if there is some method to the madness, if there is some arithmetic or if there is some rules put behind it, then, people are more likely to at least experience a good part of the, returns. So, and I have been told multiple times by clients I meet that nobody tells us when to exit. So then I point them out to MisterBond that, okay, maybe this guy can tell you when to exit, right? So, he's very practical, needless to say. He's very, very practical. So one must follow his advice. It goes without saying.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ashish.
In fact, that's one of the ways how Sunil and I as well started interacting. Because, for me as well, okay, mutual funds was all about, stay invested for the long haul, etc. And then I read about Sunil on Twitter, and, he speaks a little bit about exit strategy. And I said, everyone just talks about investing, but what about finally when the end goal is here? And what if the end goal is in March 2020? Then, the whole world is falling apart. What are you going to do then, right? So, you know what, Sunil, in fact, before I go to you, since we are talking about this entire concept of staying invested, let's go across now to Motilal Oswal, whose theme is literally buy right, sit tight. Your tagline is that, Akhil. How did Sunil manage to convince you and Ramdev then to go slightly against your theme? I think he convinced you all to create a dynamic equity scheme whose theme is actually buy low, sell high. And of course, MisterBond swap strategy as well. So how did that work? How did he get you guys on his side of the boat?
Thanks, Mubina. I think this is an interesting story, and it was not only me and Ramdevji, but Ashish also was with us at the time. So we were Ashish and myself were leading, and all three of us, including Sunil, we had to convince Ramdevji. So this is like going back in 2013-14, when we started to launch our equity products, equity schemes. Under the leadership of Ramdevji, obviously we were practicing the buy right, sit tight investment philosophy. we wanted to launch minimum products, the bare minimum products, which made sense. And since 2013, 14, 15, Sunil, of course, being a dear friend, he was in touch with Aashish and myself. And like Aashish mentioned, a lot of Excel sheets were coming here, and trying to convince us that a dynamic equity kind of a product makes a lot of sense. And we were having a lot of dialogue. I mean, for a very long time. I think almost 2 years. And then we thought that, okay, let's give it an attempt of thinking to launch it. And fortunately, we had a proprietary valuation model. We call it Motilal Oswal Value Index. It was very different, very distinct, and our fund managers, investment team were using it just to get some sense on the market valuation. So we had the model in place. So we gave the model to Sunil to see whether it works, doesn't work. So he took the model, he tested it, and he gave a green signal that this is good to go. So the model was clear. In principle, thought to launch the fund also was clear. The third thing, of course, that as we were launching our equity schemes, we were getting a lot of traction, a lot of investors, a lot of distributors, and they also had this need and demand that Motilal Oswal as an AMC should have a solution-oriented product which they can expose their investors to. And then all in all, we took all the data points to Ramdevji. We did a presentation to him. It took some
almost 2 hour presentation, if you remember.
That story short. Finally, he gave the go-ahead, but there were terms and conditions. The terms and conditions were that the equity component would not change. So the equity component was basically mirroring our flagship FlexiCap fund. The fixed income part had to be absolutely safe and passive. And movie would be the model because that was time tested and it was our proprietary. So he put those conditions. So in a sense, we were just giving a solution to buy low and sell high, but the model was proprietary. Equity was simply mirroring our flagship portfolio, and the liquid or the debt part was absolutely passive, and it made sense. So that is how the product got conceived. And the condition of what Aashish and myself gave to Sunil was that he had to lead the marketing. So it was his baby, his product, and he had to raise money for us. So
they made me go to 9 cities over 11 days.
He was my boss. He became
then we had meetings from breakfast,
yes,
lunch, high tea, and dinner. 9 cities over 11 days.
We did a lot of roadshows. We traveled, and
but just one thing to point out, it's frankly when you say buy and hold or buy right, sit tight, that is actually Motilal Oswal's outlook towards owning businesses. Doesn't have to necessarily apply to investors balancing or not balancing their rebalancing.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Portfolios. So not really a conflict from that perspective.
Right. So that's the little story. And of course, the fund is popular and doing well. And he continues to promote our scheme. He continues to keep guiding whenever things are not working well. And so the relationship is absolutely absolutely very, very strong. As we speak, we are still discussing on a few more ideations. Again, coming back to the point that a lot of Excel sheets, a lot of mathematics, understanding that, putting in the brain, and then thinking of how to launch it. Maybe I hope if you can convince Neil to give the solution in terms of implementing it, then I think he has some very, very differentiated ideas for the investors and the distributors out here. So it's been great working with Sunil. He's a friend, and Sunil, wishing you a very, very happy birthday, and congratulations for the book Think Hatke. And you are actually symbol of Think Hatke. So
thank you, Akhil, for really, really kind words.
Many more books, and I think very important for people to read this book because it talks about very, very simple principles and fundamentals in understanding asset allocation in its true sense. I think asset allocation, I hope I'm not using the wrong word. It's one of the most abused, kind of a marketing statement, because asset allocation means that depending on your risk profile, financial planning, goals, you decide whatever assets, how much ever component you want to deploy. But eventually what really happens is the asset classes which do very well, investors tend to go overboard on those asset classes, and more often than not, they buy more when the markets are high, whichever asset class, whether it is fixed income or gold or equity or anything, or real estate now. Whatever is
Rightly
going
put,
up,
rightly
maximum
put.
money goes up on the tops, and very little money comes at the bottoms, right? So I think.
So they're chasing the stories which are already likely to get over, and ignoring the stories which are likely to
Yes.
pan out going forward. Rightly put, Akhil.
Right. So for all the investors and all the distributors, I think this book does make a lot of sense. And wishing you all the best. Thank you, Mubina, for the question. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, well, just final round of questions then from all of our panelists before I let them go. Radhika, over to you first. You've skimmed through the book, you've read it. What's your favorite chapter in the book?
So my favorite one, I guess, is the predictable answer, is the unlearn to learn one. And I think it's important because I genuinely think the mutual fund industry is evolving. Capital markets in India are evolving a lot in terms of the kind of products and the kind of concepts. And it is very easy to stick to a set of sort of time-tested things and say, be very rigid about it and not want to move beyond a standard set of practices that we've all learned. So I think the concept of unlearning to learn is going to be extremely important as we move forward.
Yeah, I think we're students for life. I mean, I'm sure you all are. You believe that truly about yourselves. Snehal, how do you see this book benefit mutual fund investors?
I think this book is good for both types of investors. When I say both types of investors, one is something like a matured investor, experienced investor, and one is like a new beginner. But I think fear and greed is there for both the types. Okay, it can be more or less because considering the matured and the new beginner. But the way some of the topics are written here about the asset allocation, about the positive thinking and thinking positively how you can invest logically. Some of these topics with the real life examples which is quoted, which are really good. And I think therefore it is very, very important that we all, including many of the investors and the industry, should be reading this book. Investing and wealth creation is journey. And I think we should make it delightful with reading this book of MisterBond.
Thank you.
All right, excellent. Sanjay, finally over to you then. What has been your takeaway from this book? It's his third book now. What do you think stands out in this one?
So I think if you look right at the front page of the book, and people will see it, it says it's a practical journey on the path to wealth creation. I think that is the core of this. And I think the way that Sunil is able to bring complicated concepts with simple real life examples, I think that's a great takeaway from this book for me. And I particularly enjoyed, and I would recommend the book for the reason, of course, there are great chapters. I really enjoyed the chapter on the persona of MisterBond and the look behind the curtain a little bit. And I think that I think those are great reasons to read the book. And I agree with Snehal, it's a book for everyone.
Sanjay, the tagline, "A practical journey on the path to wealth creation," was suggested to me by my elder son, Vardhaman.
Oh, very nice.
So, both my boys are involved in whatever I do. They are, and I must say that I got one small note written on a piece of paper one fine day on the office desk. "Papa, I'm proud of you. I love you, Vardhaman." And I must have seen it after 10-15 days. And according to me, that was one of the biggest awards I have got because it was unexpected. And if my boys are looking up to me, I wish I stand up to their expectations.
Brilliant.
That's lovely.
Brilliant story.
And I think that's inspiration for the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th book, I'm sure, Sunil, which we will see in time to come. Neil, so much time spent with Sunil. What do you think are you going to learn the most from him, from this book?
Yeah, so a couple of things stand out for me for the book, and it reflects some of the things that people have already said before me. And one is that it's a very solution-oriented book, in the sense that it gives practical solutions to real-world problems, And the main thing is that he goes back to his 35 years of experience and tells you about those. So it's not about someone else's experience that he's putting in the book. It's his own experience and how he is thought differently and how he has actually implemented that. So that was great. because it lends us a personal touch to the whole book, and it lends that honesty to the book, I feel. Secondly, I think we're in a market where people are very reactive, people just react to things. And so Neil's, this book has been very proactive. It gives proactive solutions. It doesn't tell you just to react. It tells you a plan actually to go, how do you invest in it, So I like the fact that it's very proactive and it'll be very helpful to many, probably all the people, that are there. And thirdly, we're in a world where people are really just talk differently, but do you walk the talk is most important, and I think the main thing that Sunil has demonstrated through this book is that he's actually walked the talk. It's not just we say words are cheap, but if you can walk the talk, that's the most important thing. And I think that was a big takeaway for me, that he's actually done all these things over 35 years and done it pretty successfully too. So in the end, he talks. The book talks about smoothing investor experience. I think the book does the same. It's a very good reading experience. So I wish Sunil all the best, and I urge everyone to pick up this book and at least take a read on it. So,
thank you.
Well, Sunil has not just walked the talk. He's punched it out on a spreadsheet and shot an email out to everyone for all to see, and also, of course, now written it in a book. Ashish, so many years of experience, so much to learn from Mr. Bond. I don't know how is he going to, concise it all in a 200 odd page book. But yeah, what do you think is going to be the biggest takeaway for investors, old, new?
I think, a lot of the learnings have been shared clearly. I enjoyed reading everything that related to his personal experiences and his life story. And second, needless to say, is, this whole underlying theme, if you kind of look at a common thread, is about, staying disciplined and keeping it simple. Because, I think one of my panelists mentioned that the industry really, really complicates things. I always tell people that, to buy some 200 good stocks, we have some 1,500 funds. So it's complicated enough. I think his, underlying common thread is keep things simple and stay the course. So needless to say, that's what works.
Managing investor emotions. And Akhil, do you think the book will hopefully help investors from, getting reactive or very responsive for when things feel like they're falling apart?
Certainly, I would believe so. If people do read it properly, and I like one comment, it just popped up on the screen. Think Hatke, practice Datke. So I think the practicing part is extremely important, and not getting carried away with market swings, asset classes. Stick to asset allocation. Stick to the asset allocation principles. And all of us out here have so many models eventually trying to help investors to achieve that, reduce the risk, reduce the volatility, help them achieve their goals, their desired returns. So I think the main thing is in practicing rather than, I think the best thing about the book is it's a very small book, so it should not be much. It should not be painful for investors who really. It's not like a big thick novel where you read few pages and then it goes into the storeroom. I think this is very simple to just read it, spin through practical examples, live experiences, understanding models, all of these things. But the best pages, being a sales guy, is where he explains Motilal Oswal dynamic fund. So it's my favorite.
It has multi-asset fund also.
That was your brainchild also, Ashish.
Ashish's brainchild.
Yes. I know that.
Spoken like a true salesperson, I must say. Okay. Well, finally, before we all officially launch the book, Sunil, must hear from you. You've turned 60. How would you look back at the last 60 and what's in store for the next phase of life? Are we going to see Mr. Bond finally driving in an Aston Martin for himself, perhaps?
Mr. Bond is a very simple and down-to-earth person. And I'm sure all of you all will vouch for that also. I've never been flamboyant. So the same values, hopefully, I've tried to imbibe in my boys also, not to be over, unnecessary expenditure. We are teaching our investors to save and invest, and I cannot just do the opposite side of the story. But having said that, it's been extremely fruitful 60 years of my life. Absolutely no regrets looking back. One of the best professions I have been in is the mutual fund industry. I started my journey in 1985, so it's almost 36 years, and 26 years in the mutual fund industry. I've adapted, changed. I have become zero in terms of business in 92 post Harshad Mehta. I became zero again in 2013 when SEBI introduced direct. I had to bounce back both the times. Fortunately, I could manage that. God's grace, my only wish is that, and the legacy which I would like to leave behind is that if mutual fund industry appreciates that we should concentrate on investor experience rather than chasing returns, is the only thought process and aim in my life. And if all of us speak the same language, I think the investing community will be in a better place.
Absolutely.
Very well put. Well, it is the ups and downs that, of course, define that you are alive. What's the point of just having a straight line life, Sunil? And I think yours has definitely been not just an enriching one for yourself, but you've ensured that people around you as well grow. And I think that's admirable. So without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I want all of y'all to lift your copy of Think Hatke, a practical journey on the path to wealth creation. I sincerely hope that this book is something that all of our viewers read, learn from. There's lots to learn from, and like Akhil very, well put it, and it's just a 250-odd page book. So it's a simple read.
It's 137-page book. 137-page book.
Trust me, I finished 93 pages in a day. It's been a fun book, a very simple to read book. And guess what? It's power packed with examples, and the proofs are all in the pudding. So this is just your one-stop destination.
So before we end this session, I want to specially thank Mubina for agreeing to anchor the show. She is live from Toronto, by the way. It's late at night. And I wish to thank all the panelists. I'm really humbled for with their presence.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you all the viewers. Of course, without them, all of us would not be there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sunil. Happy birthday again and all the best.
Thank you, Sunil.
Thank you. Hopefully, I will see you soon in Mumbai, all of you all.
Bye.
Yes. Look forward.
See you. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. See you.
Thank you.
Yeah, everyone, have a great Saturday evening. I'm going to leave you all to your readings. Happy reading, everyone, and all the very best.
Thank you.
Sure.
Great, Mubina. Thank you so much. This was really nice.
Thanks. Great. It was great interacting. I hope everyone had a good time as well. Happy birthday again. Enjoy your day. Please keep aside all your mutual fund stuff now and just take a day off for yourself.
And you want to announce to the audience, we'll be still there. We are going to start a show together.
Oh, yes. In fact, let's take that opportunity to everybody, still logged in with us. Very soon, Sunil and I are going to be launching a show that's going to be dedicated to our viewers, their questions, their queries on investing, on the markets, on the mutual funds. In fact, I saw a couple of questions as well pop up asking us to talk about debt. Well, all of those questions will be answered. We're going to be going live on all our social media platforms, freely accessible to everyone. I promise there'll be something for old and new investors. The date will be announced.
It will be a Think Hatke show.
It will be a Think Hatke show, yes. and don't worry, you won't have to do any homework like how Ashish has to. Just tune in, and we hope that you will get something educative and informative from that show. But more details will be shared soon enough.
Sure. Thanks, Mubina. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you for attending.
Bye-bye, everyone. Have a good day.
Yeah.